Hello, everyone. How you doing? I'm so delighted that you're with us here today. This is episode 1 of Faith to Lead. I'm so excited that we can launch off on this journey together where we can explore different scriptures from the Bible and find how they relate into different areas and aspects of leadership. Your business can win because both of those fields, faith and business, do connect. I want to welcome you here from wherever you are, whether it's tuning in on YouTube or on video or on an audio stream or any podcast of your like, because we're going to have an exciting journey. And you know what? At any time, you can share this podcast, you can subscribe to it, and I'm going to invite you to go ahead and to engage with us. Ask questions. Say, Aubrey, I disagree with you. All of that is fine, and you can do that at faithtolead.com. I want to give you some statistics right now, and this is really compelling to me. And this comes from the Project Management Institute of Delaware Valley. It's a leadership challenge post-COVID survey. Now, the Delaware Valley, we're talking about Philadelphia, Southern New Jersey, Delaware, Northern Maryland, all of those businesses together. When this survey was done on February 27th, 2025. I want to see if this describes you. It says, from 2022, the year 2022 to 2024, trust in immediate managers took a dramatic nosedive from 46% to 29%. That's a 23% drop. In other words, if you're a leader and you're in an environment, do you feel like no one trusts you anymore? What happened in the last 2 years after COVID? You know, everyone's second guessing your thoughts, second guessing whether they should still be there or not. You just feel like there's just a general environment of lack of trust. Look at this statistic. Stress is surging amongst leaders. 71% report a significant increase in their stress levels as compared to 63%, which means, there's always some kind of anxiety in leadership, isn't there? When you're dealing with people and you're running things, there's always some kind of worry. However, it's increasing. It's not staying the same. It's harder to lead today than it was even last year. And look at this last statistic. Frontline leaders' purpose fades as the C-suite thrives. It says that there was a 20% decline in their sense of purpose compared to 2020. That's another way of saying if you are not the CEO, the CFO, the chief visionary officer, that's the C-suite, the top dogs, the people at the top floor. But what if you're not the leader, but you are one of a leaders, maybe the second tier? And for that group of people, that there has been a tremendous decline in their sense of purpose, where they're saying, you know what, I'm not really running things, but everyone's looking to me with all the pressures, all the problems. I've got to solve everything. I'm still treated like one of the leaders, but I am not the leader. Right now, all of the costs seem to be outweighing all the benefits of this role. Why am I doing what I'm doing? You may feel like that right now. You may be going into a team meeting and saying, why do I keep doing this? This is, an exercise of futility. Well, today we're talking to that 20%. We're talking to those individuals who are in a position of leadership and a level of executive authority, contemplating it, and you're feeling all of these negative trends right now in your leadership environment. So we're going to look at some time-tested principles from the Bible, also some contemporary scholarship to get you right. The first thing I want you to realize is you've got to understand the environment that you're in. You're not alone with this. There's a story that comes out of the Bible. It's right around Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 12, Exodus 18 to 21. I love to reflect on this passage because it deals with the story of Moses. And Moses was a person who dealt with all of these existing pains. When you're going to look at that scripture on your own time, that's Exodus 3, 1 to 12, Exodus 18 to 21. And when you read through that passage, what you'll see, this was Moses at the lowest point of his life. It was Moses when he had a great beginning. He was a Hebrew born, but grew up in Pharaoh's palace. He had all the trappings of authority. And one day he went out and tried to do something in his leadership, and he actually ended up a fugitive. He made a tremendous mistake. Have you ever made a mistake before? I know I have. And what ended up happening was he ran away from it all. And then he encountered God in what we call the burning bush experience. That was Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 12. And it's important for us to realize that sometimes we have to remember how and when and where we were called into leadership. Your calling for Moses was that moment when he saw a burning bush and he heard God's voice. Some of us, we have this sense all of our lives, like, I'm supposed to be in leadership. I'm supposed to start a business. I'm supposed to do something. Or maybe it was strategized. I'm going to go to school, get my business degree, get into management, work my way up the corporate ladder, get myself into some role or a position of authority. And so it was thought out, strategized, planned. You sacrifice for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes in life, there's a call where you didn't do all those things. You got thrown into it. You know, I'll tell you my personal experience. I remember right around 2005, I was working hard in running for office. And in 2005, I actually won what was called a county commissioner seat. And that was over 40 municipalities, a constituency of about 450,000 people, military bases. I campaigned for a year. I worked hard for it. I was ready and I was prepared to the extent that I thought. And then eventually I won. It was a great honor where I could go in and say, I'm going to represent as a duly elected official this county that was called Burlington County, still is called Burlington County. But right on the day, the week where I was supposed to get sworn in, I was getting my prepared remarks from my public information officer. This is dealing with how people are called. And I got a call from my mother that on that same week, my father had a medical emergency. My father was a senior pastor of a church. He ran it, just phenomenally well, preached every Sunday, ran all the meetings. And I said, okay, well, what's wrong with that? She said, you got to come over here quickly. And when I went over there, my father was in a very, very delicate state. And so what I remember doing was I called my public information officer and I said, we're going through the speech. And I remember him as vividly today as I did 20 years ago. He said, Aubrey, we're working on your speech, but I hear the sirens in the ambulance that you're in. And right there, I said, I've got to do two things at once. I got sworn in to a county seat on a Saturday. And that Sunday morning, I had to become the lead preacher. And that was it for 7 months. One of those roles I could see coming. The other role I never saw coming. And sometimes in your leadership position, when you feel like your morale's declining, sometimes when you reflect on your call, you say, I got thrown into this. I never saw this. Everyone asked me to do this. I never prepared for this. I want to tell you that don't question the beauty or the pageantry around the call. If you were called to it, if everyone looked at you and said, we need you to do this, and you felt something and you just said, go ahead and say yes, do the best you can. Because there's always that sense of call to a leadership. So don't just reflect on all the challenges that you're in. Look back at those initial moments, those searing experiences that got you where you are today. The second is there exists a pain. In that same passage, when you look at with Moses' story, it actually says that God says, the pain of my children have come up before me. Don't just remember how and when you were called. Remember all the circumstances that demanded it. Look at all the things macroscopically in your organization, in your community that needed to get fixed, that needed to get better, where there needed to be a greater level of progress than just moving sales or whatever there is, even though that's as valid as any. So reflect on the pain that you were brought in to solve, not just the difficulties that you're dealing with people or the lack of morale. Say, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to bring out some solutions. I remember why I was brought in here. I remember what I was supposed to do. And reflect on that and rededicate and repurpose yourself to that pain. And also, don't forget, and this is going to sound silly, there's the need for a person. You are needed. Sometimes when we think of a leader, we like to think of it almost like AI. Well, there's a problem with leadership, the people upstairs or, the guy in the big seat or whatever it is. And we try to depersonalize it. But the reality is you, the person, are needed. When we define leader and leadership, I like to reflect on the leader as a person. Leadership is a process. That is how that person uses their skills, their influence, their authority to the people around them to encourage them, to promote them, to advance them, to provide for them the resources they need to drive the results. But don't forget the need of one person to say yes. One person to look at themselves with all their insecurities, with all their challenges and say, I'll go ahead and I'll put my name in that hat. I'll step up into that role. I've heard that call. I've reflected on the pain and I'll do it. So don't forget that you are that person. So if you feel like your morale is down, I'm telling you right now, you say, I heard this from Aubrey. I'm that person. I'm that one. That's right. You are. By the way, if you are enjoying this and you know there's some leaders around you that need to hear this kind of motivation today, we're focusing today on the people whose morale is down so that we can increase the level of confidence and joy that you have in leadership. So go ahead and share this podcast. You can subscribe to it and share us with a comment at faith2lead.com. But not only do you need to understand your leadership environment, you have to fulfill some leadership expectations. When you look at that particular passage of Moses in the Bible, it says that he had that burning bush experience. He was filled at that moment with awe about what this entire experience means. It was a searing experience that changed him. Moses after the burning bush was different than Moses before the burning bush. He was marked by his failure. He was also marked with a sense of opportunity and a revelation of who he should be. There's a word that we love to hang on to in leadership texts. It's called values. What makes you tick? What are your ideals? What do you believe in? Not just what you say you believe in or what you espouse, those great value statements that you see on the walls. We're for fairness and equality and progress. Those are all great things, but they're espoused. When you get into the confines of your own room, when people see how you live your life, how you do what you do, and they glean who you are by your actions and behavior, not just the words that you share. Those are your true values. And those searing experiences, they tend to adjust, refine, perfect, complete your true values, who you are at those lowest moments. One of the things that you want to do to fulfill your leadership expectation with the people who are around you is you want to know what you believe, know what you stand on, know what is unnegotiable, and defend it at all costs. No one likes to follow a person who's vacillating with the tide, who always believes in whatever the last person said that walked out of their office. Sometimes you will gain more respect out of saying no to people because they know you are defending and preserving your values, your sense of ethics, how things should happen. So you want to know your values and you want to preserve that authenticity. Also, you want to be able to sustain your faith and vision. When I reflect on just the mosaic encounter of leadership, and it's powerful, don't forget, check it out when you can, is Moses wasn't just presented with an opportunity or a requirement to lead. He also had to face a whole lot of his personal insecurities. He had to say, I don't speak well enough. I'm not thorough enough. Who on earth would listen to me? Why me? And so often, and when we get in our leadership journey, or you may be in this right now, you may be part of that 20% with your sense of being a good leader is declining. You're questioning yourself. Is you have to sometimes face your insecurities and say, this is how I feel, but it may not be the reality, that I can still get things done. And sustaining your faith and vision, it means facing up to your insecurities, sometimes recognizing your weaknesses, seeing how others can complement them, and still knowing that someone just like you, as fallible as you are, with all the insecurities that you know of, can still move the needle. So I want you to be encouraged, strengthened to know, every leader, every great leader out there had some flaws, had some challenges. None of us are perfect, but you've got to sustain your faith to face your insecurities, to address them through a myriad of ways. Also, you have to develop a sustainable structure. When you look at another passage in Exodus, and I love this particular passage, it was when Moses was actually working and he had delivered the people from Pharaoh's leadership, but he was out there and he had all these people that were around him. And what ended up happening was his father-in-law, a man by the name of Jethro, came to him and he said these words. He said, Moses, what you're doing isn't good. It's not sustainable. He says, you will wear yourself out and you will also wear out the people who are under your leadership. And that's important. Don't miss that. That sometimes in our leadership, as altruistic as we are, I'm going to do this the best I can. I'm going to be a perfect me. I'm going to lead and direct and be, just like all the great leaders. You can wear the people around you out. And so what Jethro did is, Jethro at that time, he addressed, the way I would say it is, he said, you're a good leader, but you've got to improve your leadership. Leader is the person. Leadership is the process. He says, you're a good person, but how you direct, how you are managing, how you are delegating, the resources and the authority, how you are transmitting that so that others can step up, that needs a whole lot of work. And oftentimes in our leadership has to be commensurate with who we are as a leader. The burning bush experience made Moses a leader. Talking to another person improved his leadership. He had to be willing to learn new things from different methods. He had to grow as a person, grow in even how he received insight to improve his leadership. Sometimes the way we were brought into leadership, brought into a position or brought into a role, we enshrine it. We say, this has worked for me for 30 years, for 10 years. Here's how I got started. But there's an expectation that you'll evolve, that you will grow, that you will learn from a myriad of different sources. As precious as those initial experiences were, there's other ways for you to grow, to develop in your leadership. Moses was willing to learn from someone else in a different way than the burning bush experience. So one of the things that Jethro said is, he said, what's happening is everyone's coming to you for everything. If they need a decision, go to Moses. If they have a small matter, a small dispute, go to Moses. If it's a big dispute, go to Moses. If they need food, go to Moses. Too many things are passing through one person. So he says, what you have to do is you've got to create a leadership structure. You've got to find some individuals that you can now delegate authority to so that matters can now be handled by them, so that everything doesn't fall on you, so that you get exhausted, and so do the people from that process. I want to challenge you today that if you feel like your morale is declining, maybe part of it is that this is the time, the moment, the opportunity for you to develop a new sustainable structure. Who can you delegate authority to? Who around you can you have handle some of the matters that you're handling now? What are some of the things that are stressing you out that some of the people who have been with you all for the last season of your leadership, you're saying, but they can handle a few of these things. You want to start identifying those individuals, start delegating authority to them so that now your structure, your team, how decisions are being made is being delegated and developed in a new way. And the last is you want to excel in selecting people and delegating authority. I'm a firm believer that the greatest decisions that you will ever make as a leader, the greatest testament of what you believe, your greatest policy statement, it's not the actions that you do. It's not even some of the great achievements that you've done under your tenure as a manager, as an organization developer, as a leader, or as a CEO. It's the people who you select, the people that you surround yourself with, your stakeholders. If a person were to walk into your office, it's those three people that you're always talking to, always working through. That speaks more about your decision-making, your values, what you appreciate, what's promotable, what should be expected than anything else you do. Your people who you delegate authority to reveal your true policies. So you want to excel in identifying the people that you delegate authority to. And then when you identify them, delegate it. I'll give you some tips later on down the line, some of the principles of delegating authority. I learned that the hard way, how to let things go. So I want you to remember all of these points. You want to know your values, preserve your authenticity, sustain your faith and vision, develop a sustainable structure, excel in selecting people. That's how you can ramp up your leadership. Because if you feel like you're in a moment of decline, where you're losing your joy, losing your passion, where you're saying, I want out, maybe it's really just saying that this is an opportunity for you to measure up and to tune up on each of these areas. If you also want to share this, don't forget, you can share this with a friend of yours or anyone that you know. You can subscribe to Faith to Lead because we're just starting this conversation. I'm having the time of my life. And also, if you want to send in a comment, and that's so important, because from time to time, I would love to share some of the comments that we're hearing, some of the questions, some of the concerns, even some of the areas you say, Aubrey, I disagree with you on that point. Because this is a community of leaders, people who see the Bible, see the faith, the time-tested principles of God's word, but you can also see how you can apply them to your business so that you can win. So I want you just to take a look at all those things. And, I want you to just also conclude with this, is to reflect on your personal convictions. What do you really believe? What do you stand for? What do you tolerate? What won't you tolerate? What needs to change? Reflect on your team's pain points. What's really causing the problems? Not just the symptoms of the problems. Everyone's arguing that's a problem. No, what are we arguing about, and why are we arguing about that, and why is that an issue? Keep asking yourself those successive whys. If you ask the same question why 3 times, usually it will unearth what the true pain point is. So reflect on that and how uniquely you as a person and as a leader can address them. I also want you to write a personal vision statement. There's a lot of scholarship on writing your personal vision statement, your leadership philosophy, how you will lead. And here's what you're answering. What do you see in yourself 5 years from now? If you had to stand 5 years from now and look back and say, this is who I am as a leader, what do you see? What do you sound like? What does it feel to be around you? Appeal to all of those senses. That's your vision statement. Do that for yourself as a person, but don't just stop for you as an individual. Write it a team vision statement. What do you see in your team 5 years from now? That is so important. What do you see yourselves doing? How does it feel to be part of that team? What are some of the achievements and the accolades and the accomplishments that this team will fulfill 5 years from now? What will be their sense, their emotional state? Will they get a sense of pride from being on this team 5 years from now? Write down that statement. And this is what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to give you some homework. Share that with your team. One of the hallmark requirements of a leader is a person who can communicate a vision. People, they're not just looking for you to handle the problems for right now. They want to see that you've given some thought to the future. What are some steps that we can take so that we can get from where we are to an even more preferred or desired state? It's got to be positive. It must be compelling. Share that vision statement. It lets people look ahead, look forward, realize you're the person who's looking at things that others are not, and it will correct and address many factors in the environment that you're in. So I hope that you got encouraged by checking this out today. Don't forget, you can share this podcast, you can subscribe to Faith to Lead, and we want to hear your comments. We want this to be a noisy, vivacious podcast. So you can do that just by going right to faithtolead.com, submitting a comment, a question, anything you'd like, so that we can keep this engagement going. At the next episode, I want you to tune in, because we're going to be hitting on how to forge a leadership mindset. Today, we're dealing with just you as the leader. Now we want to get the mindset right. And from there, we're going to get to your team. So hang on, stay on for the ride, because we're just starting here at Faith to Lead.